This is the Cinebot25 version 2. It's a 2.5-inch cinewhoop with an M10 GPS unit built in, pre-installed LED light strips, a custom circuit board with a buzzer built in, a USB extension for your flight controller, a battery mount that lets you run your batteries lengthwise or sideways, and a little window on the bottom of the frame that lets you see the status of your receiver. But by far the coolest thing about this drone is that GEPRC has completely redesigned version 2 of the Cinebot to use this removable modular camera mount so you can use a single DJI O4 Pro with multiple drones. This is a really big deal because the DJI O4 Pro system is very expensive and sometimes they're hard to get. So the ability to use one DJI O4 Pro with multiple drones is going to be a huge advantage for a lot of pilots. GEPRC is not the first company to do this. SpeedyBee did this a while back with the B25, which shares a modular camera mount with the Master 3X. Now, at first glance, these drones look similar, but when we look close, you're going to see that these drones have a completely different design philosophy. We'll dive deeper into those differences in just a second. GEPRC has designed this to be a beginner-friendly drone, and it is pretty durable, and it will take some crashes without breaking, but that bulletproof build means it's pretty heavy. It weighs 219 grams without a battery, so you're not going to get it under 250 grams, and it is pretty loud. Here's what it sounds like. So what does the Cinebot25 V2 bring to the table, and is it enough to make you choose this drone over another 2.5-inch cinewhoop like the B25? That's what we're going to find out in this video. Here's what the drone will look like when it comes to you. Oh, look at that. Inside the box, we've got an accessories bag with an extra battery strap, some extra rubber grommets, an extra battery mat, some handy tools, loads of extra hardware that's all nicely labeled, an extra camera hood, some extra molded plastic antenna mounts. We get an extra set of props. These are HQ DT63s, a guide on how to set up your GPS in beta flight, a quick start guide, warranty cards and safety notices, and a sheet of stickers. The drone feels great in my hands. I can't wait to get this one in the air. This modular camera mount is made from aluminum and molded plastic parts, and it's extremely strong. To remove the O4 Pro camera, you just have to remove 4 screws, 2 here and 2 on the underside of the drone, and the entire assembly pops right out. I know that GEPRC does plan to release other drones that are compatible with this mount, which means that you'll be able to use the same modular camera mount and the same DJI O4 Pro in different drones. The O4 Pro system is mounted onto 2 plates, which are isolated from the rest of the assembly with 6 rubber grommets. For a cinematic FPV drone, this is a more effective soft mounting solution than systems that just use silicone inserts for the camera, so you'll be able to get smooth, vibration-free footage from your DJI O4 Pro. This mount does a great job protecting that O4 Pro camera lens, and you don't see props in view, and there is plenty of clearance for ND filters. Although the disadvantage of all that protection is it's a little bit hard to install and remove your ND filters just because it's hard to get your fingers in there. Our motors are GEPRC's SpeedX2 1404 4600 kV motors. 1404 is a pretty standard size for a 2.5-inch cinewhoop, and that kV is slightly higher than we sometimes see, which makes sense given the weight of this quad. This carbon plate is 2 millimeters thick, and the wheelbase is 123 millimeters. Underneath, we have a clear plastic window so you can see the status light on your receiver, which can be handy. For example, maybe your RX won't connect to your radio because it's gone into Wi-Fi mode. You wouldn't know that without seeing this status light. The LED strips come pre-installed inside the prop cards, and they are pointed downwards to give you a cool underglow effect. There is one for each side, which I'll show you in just a second. Notice how the prop guards have been designed to block out the light in the front right underneath the camera so you don't get light bleed into your FPV footage. These prop guards are pretty stiff, but they do have some flex to them to absorb impacts in a crash. If you do break them, replacements are cheap and you can remove them just by removing 4 screws. These 2 up here and these 2 back here. Once you remove those 4 screws and the camera head, the carbon plate will separate from the plastic ducts. To completely separate your ducts, you will need to unplug your LEDs, your GPS, and your ELRS receiver, but fortunately all those connections have plugs and they're clearly labeled. It's pretty cool how this drone has been designed to be modular and comes apart so easily for maintenance or repairs. Our flight controller is the Taker F722 35 amp all-in-one board with 32-bit ESCs. Mine came with a prototype version of BLHeli 32. It was version 31.9.2 and it works great, but you can't update it. The build quality is very good. The soldering work is basically perfect as you'd expect from a GEPRC bind and fly. We have a capacitor mounted above the board with a 3D print, and there is a secondary circuit board right here that's been custom made to fit this drone. This is similar to what we saw in the Cinelog 30 version 3, and it's what allows GEPRC to cram all the bells and whistles into a tiny little build like this. It has a built-in XT30 connector, a buzzer that's square shaped to fit this frame. It has BECs for your LED strips. Notice that there's 2, one going down each side, and a USB extension for your flight controller. It's really nice that GEPRC has labeled these plugs because once you get everything disconnected, it's easy to forget what goes where. On the ducts, we have our receiver, our ELRS antenna, our GPS, and our LED light strips. Notice that the receiver is mounted with this clear plastic mount. That's what allows us to see the status light on the other side. Also notice that we have 2 plugs for 2 different LED strips. There is 1 separate LED strip for each side of the duct. Our GPS unit is mounted back here, and as you can see, it's very well protected. And even though it's completely covered, the reception is very good, which I think is because of this front-mounted air unit design, which gives us as much separation as possible between the DJI O4 Pro and our GPS antenna. On other designs that have the GPS mounted on top of the DJI O4 Pro camera, like the Stellar 25, the O4 Pro camera interferes with the GPS and reception isn't very good. So we do get better GPS performance when we have the air unit mounted all the way to the front like this. Some people might say that you don't need GPS on a smaller drone like this, but for me GPS is totally worth it because you can see valuable data like speed, altitude, distance from home, direction to home, and of course the actual GPS coordinates if you choose. And GPS rescue can really save your butt if you outrun your video reception or if you were to fail safe somewhere you couldn't get the quad back, like over water or a forest. The battery mount uses aluminum rails like we see on most other 2.5-inch cinewhoops. And on one hand, this rear-mounted lengthwise battery design is sleek and streamlined, but you are limited to certain battery sizes and shapes because of the physical limitations between the camera module and the XT30, and because too much weight in the back of the drone would throw off center of gravity. The space between the aluminum rails is about 37 millimeters, and you have about 67 millimeters between the camera module and the XT30. With larger packs, I did have trouble plugging in my XT30, and even this 720 milliamp 4S pack won't fit because it covers the XT30 connector. I mostly used these 850 CNHL packs, which did fit just fine. Notice that there's an aluminum guard at the rear of the camera mount that really limits your battery space. The mount has to stick out that far in order to leave space for the rubber grommets down below, but it's too bad they couldn't have made the mount a little more compact, because on a small drone like this, even just a little more space would have given you a lot more flexibility to run different size batteries. You can rotate these battery rails in order to mount the battery sideways. This gives you more physical space since the battery sticks out the sides, and center of gravity isn't as much of an issue with larger packs because the weight of the battery is closer to the center of the drone. But unless your batteries have super long battery leads, the connector is not going to reach the captured XT30 in the drone. Even these CNHL 850s, which have super long leads, won't reach. So if you want to run your battery sideways, you will need to make up an extension like this. Mine's about 3 inches long and it works great. You could probably get away with more like 2 inches. I was able to fit this 3000 milliamp lithium ion pack, although it is a little bit too big and too heavy for this drone, and it really does need a longer battery strap. GEPRC recommends 750 to 1100 milliamp 4S packs, and I'm pretty happy with my CNHL 850 milliamp 4S packs on this drone. If you don't want to mount your battery sideways and have to deal with a battery extension, just get some of these boxy style packs instead of these long rectangular packs. This modular camera head with the DJI O4 Pro weighs in at 65.7 grams. With the camera installed and an ND filter, the drone weighs in at just about 219 grams. That's really heavy for a 2.5-inch cinewhoop, and it means there's really no chance of getting this drone under 250 grams with a battery. With a 450 milliamp battery, which is the smallest 4S battery I own, it weighs 267.9 grams. With a 720 milliamp 4S battery, which is the battery I usually use on 2.5-inch cinewhoops, it weighs 284.6 grams. And with an 850 milliamp CNHL pack, it weighs 322 grams. Since this is a heavy drone that's always going to be over 250 grams, you might as well use some larger batteries to get some longer flight times. And with this 3000 milliamp lithium ion pack, it weighs 423.5 grams. I've been testing the Cinebot25 version 2 for a few weeks now, so I have had the chance to fly it several times at different locations. I'm a little slow getting my reviews out, but I really like to test these drones as thoroughly as possible, and you can't really do that in just one flying session. One place I flew was at a city park with a lot of people around, but the Cinebot is small and innocent, so you can get away with flying it at public places like this. That's really what the 2.5-inch form factor is great for. It's small enough to get into tight spaces and around people without being super intimidating like larger quads would be. But those 2.5-inch props and 1404 motors have the power to really rip if that's your thing. Or if you're after smooth, cinematic FPV shots, it means you can cover some distance and battle some wind. For example, if you have to get some wide shots or chase a fast-moving subject. I tested GPS rescue and it worked fine, although it does bob up and down a little bit as it tries to hold its position and altitude. I don't use the auto land feature. For me, GPS rescue is an emergency measure that's just there in case I ever outrun my video or failsafe. So as soon as the drone comes back to me, I do take over manual control. The tune on this drone is fantastic. On a lighter battery, it's agile and responsive, and it's pretty snappy when you do flips and rolls. For cinematic style flying, it's incredibly stable and easy to control, so you can get those smooth, stable FPV shots. The soft mounting system on this drone does a great job of isolating the DJI O4 Pro from vibrations, so Rocksteady and GyroFlow work great. I prefer to run my footage through GyroFlow, and I got some great results. I did end up changing my battery configuration because I wanted to have the flexibility to run different size packs without having to use an extension. So I soldered up a battery lead directly to that multi-function board in place of the captured XT30 connector. On my CNHL 850 milliamp 4S packs, I got between 4 to 6 minutes depending on how I was flying. I know that's a huge variation, but some of these packs are pretty old and some are brand new, and flight times really depend on your flying style. If you want to rip, plan on shorter flights, but 5 to 6 minutes is realistic for cinematic cruising on those 850 packs. On my 720 milliamp high voltage packs, I got about the same 4 to 6 minutes. I know that sounds illogical because they're smaller packs, but they are high voltage, so I did charge them up to 4.35 volts. They are much lighter, and the drone flies great on these packs because the power to weight ratio is so much better. I also flew 3000 milliamp lithium ion packs. They're a little heavy for this drone, but it's more of just a proof of concept, and I did get around 11 minutes. I could really see using larger batteries if you needed to be in the air longer. For example, if you're working on a video project and you have to be in the air as long as possible to get the shot. But a lithium-ion battery like this is really way too much weight for these 2.5-inch props. It can be done, it just feels heavy and sluggish, and if you ever have to pull up out of a dive or you need to react fast to pop over an obstacle, you'll end up being really high in the throttle. But for cinematic flying, where your goal is smooth and stable shots, these long flight times might be a real advantage, and you can definitely get away with larger, heavier packs, and that extra weight can actually make it easier to fly smooth, since once you get used to that higher throttle position, a heavier quad is easier to fly smoothly, and it can be much more stable, especially in the wind. But I have to say that after I went back to a lighter pack like my 720 milliamp high voltage packs, the difference was night and day. The drone flies so much better with a smaller, lighter battery. I think anywhere from 720 to 1300 milliamp packs would be ideal for this drone. If you want to fly more aggressively and do a little freestyle, go with a lighter and preferably high voltage pack. And if you want longer, more cinematic flights, go with a larger, heavier pack. Just make sure to double check the dimensions to make sure they'll fit. If we compare the Cinebot25 version 2 to the SpeedyBee Bee25, both drones have that modular DJI O4 Pro mount, which can really save you some money if you use the same DJI O4 Pro system with another compatible drone. The SpeedyBee mount is more minimalist. It only uses silicone dampeners for the camera, and it is much lighter. With the DJI O4 Pro installed, it weighs 51.5 grams. The GEPRC mount is much more robust. It's just got tons more metal, and it isolates the entire DJI O4 Pro system with that 6-point soft mounting system. But it's also much heavier. It weighs in at 65.7 grams with the DJI O4 Pro installed. That's a difference of 14 grams between these two modular camera mounting systems, and on a 2.5-inch cinewhoop, 14 grams is huge. Both drones have the GPS mounted in the rear, which gives you the maximum possible separation between the DJI O4 and your GPS antenna, and it does give you better GPS performance. It also means that the wheelbase of both quads is a little bit wider than other designs because the air unit is placed between the props. The Cinebot has a wheelbase of 123 millimeters, and the SpeedyBee has a wheelbase of 120 millimeters. The motors are exactly the same. Both quads are running 1404 4600 kV motors. Both quads do have LED lights built in. On the B25, they're more of a flashy, multicolor, neon sign style of lighting, and on the Cinebot25 V2, it's more of a subtle blue underglow that is blacked out in the front so the light doesn't bleed into your FPV footage. The Cinebot25 V2 has an F7 flight controller and that custom circuit board with a buzzer built in, and the ELRS antenna has a little bit more separation from the frame. The B25 has an F4 flight controller. It doesn't have a buzzer built in, and the ELRS antenna pokes out the sides in the middle of the quad and doesn't have as much separation from the frame. The B25 does have Bluetooth built in, so you can tune the drone wirelessly with the SpeedyBee app. The B25 is wired for GPS, but it doesn't actually come with a GPS unit. You have to chase down a compatible GPS and install it yourself, where the Cinebot25 V2 does come with a GPS unit pre-installed as standard. The battery space on the B25 is also slightly more limited than it is on the Cinebot25 V2. It's about 33 millimeters between these two aluminum rails, and you have about 63 millimeters of space between the camera mount and the XT30. But you also have the option of mounting your battery sideways with the B25. As far as weight goes, the B25 has a huge weight advantage. With the camera module installed, and an ND filter, and to make it fair, I'm going to add a nano GPS unit, the B25 weighs in at 180.7 grams. And if I add my 720 milliamp 4S battery, it weighs in at 246.5 grams. So the B25 is a sub 250 gram drone, even with a reasonable sized battery. But the build quality of the B25 just feels cheaper and more plasticky. The Cinebot25 V2 is much more durable. It feels like a more refined design with higher quality materials, and I really appreciate having GPS built right into the drone as standard. The camera module and soft mounting solution for the DJI O4 Pro is also much stronger, which I think suggests that GEPRC plans to use this mount in larger, more capable drones in the future. GEPRC has already confirmed the next drone that will use this mount, and by the time you're watching this video, it may have already been released. I can speculate that this mount will also be used in larger freestyle drones down the road based on this super reinforced design, which I think is overkill for just a 2.5 inch drone. But I don't actually know that, I'm just putting 2 and 2 together. All right, you guys, now it's time for my conclusions. This is a very capable, general purpose, prop protected drone that's great for getting smooth, cinematic FPV shots outdoors or even indoors or around people. The build quality is very good, as you'd expect from GEPRC. The materials feel premium, and it feels like it's really gonna take some crashes without breaking. The tune is also very good, and when you throw it into angle mode, it's stable and easy to fly, so it's a great option for new pilots or anyone who needs to get some smooth, cinematic FPV shots. But the real selling point of this drone is this modular camera mount, because if you get this drone, then in the future, you'll be able to quickly and easily move this DJI O4 Pro system into another drone. The only real drawback I see with this drone is the weight. At 219 grams without a battery, it's really heavy, and you're not gonna get it under 250 grams. And it is much heavier than other drones in this category, like the B25. Now there is a justification for a heavier quad like this. It's more durable and it's less likely to break. And remember that a lot of that weight is in this modular camera housing, so your DJI O4 Pro system is safely encapsulated in rubber and aluminum. And for new pilots who haven't mastered throttle control yet, a lower thrust to weight ratio can actually make this drone easier to control, because you really have to be higher in the throttle, so you have more throttle resolution when you're just hovering and cruising. With a lighter weight drone with a higher thrust to weight ratio, a beginner is more likely to go floor ceiling as they learn throttle control. So a heavier drone like this could actually be more forgiving. What do you guys think of the Cinebot25 version 2? Which of these 2.5 inch cinewhoops do you prefer, and why? Let me know if you guys have any questions. Just drop them in the comments below. I try to respond to everything, and I love talking FPV with you guys. All right, that'll do it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one.